Well, Bobby Julich, 2 big wins already this year, Paris-Nice and the Criterium International. This isn't really his sort of race. So we must look to Thor Hushovd as the leader of the Pro Tour today. Further down, of course, we do have George Hincapie, and he'll be among the favourites. Well, Paul, talking of George Hincapie, we do, of course, have also Lance Armstrong riding, putting in what is a rare appearance, but a little bit of a reversal for roles for Lance today, I think.
Well, a little bit of reversal in condition as well, because we saw Lance Phil in Paris-Nice at the start of the season, and he certainly was not in great shape. I think a combination of the difficult race and, of course, the weather conditions. Then he came back in the Flèche Brabançon, or the Brabantse Pijl in Belgium, and he rode a very good supporting role for George Hincapie. And then just last week, Paris-Camembert, where he finished 24th and in the main group, was a real indication, I think, that Armstrong is back on track. But for him, I think what's more important is he's turned himself around today. He's going to ride for George Hincapie. One day or another, George Hincapie's going to win this bike race.
And it might be today. What a man to have as a backup man in Lance Armstrong. Now, of course, there are many riders want to win the Tour of Flanders. I remember Sean Kelly, who won every great single-day race except this one. He finished second in this event 3 times, and he misses this one on his honours list. Paul, give us some more favourites. There are plenty of them, I know.
There are plenty of them. The thing about this race is you need experience. Stefan Westerman, last year's winner, he's going to be back. Belgium, I would think, would like to see Peter van Petegem get the victory, because Van Petegem is a man who lives on the route. He knows the route very well. Almost every little turn of the road he knows. And the big favourite, the up-and-coming star, the young lion of Flanders, Tom Boonen, he won't be far away.
You bet he won't. Now, let's have a look at the route, because it's just 1 kilometre shorter than last year, 17 climbs, and the climbs that really hurt come towards the end.
They certainly do. It is a very difficult course. It's a long day for the riders, about 6.5 hours in the saddle. But to me, probably the race starts when they get to the Quaremont, the old Quaremont. It's a very difficult climb, not very steep at all. It climbs up for around about 1.5 kilometres. It's 11% at its most difficult gradient, but an average of 5%. Then, of course, they're onto the Mur de Grammont, the famous Mur de Grammont, where if you want to win the Tour of Flanders, you've got to have great condition. Again, it's a difficult climb, 25% at one stage, but an average gradient of around about 11%. And then, if you're looking to go for the lone victory, don't discount the Bosberg. The Bosberg is the final climb of the day, and around about 11 kilometres to go from the summit. And don't forget, it's the 89th edition of the Tour of Flanders, 159 miles, and that's approximately the distance from Atlanta, Georgia to Montgomery, Alabama. There are 25 teams on the start, making 200 riders. The most career wins, by the way, in the Tour of Flanders is 3, and that's been done by 4 men. Achiel Buyse of Belgium, Firenze Magni of Italy, Eric Le Mans, and of course, more recently, Johan Museeuw.
We're looking at the 5 leaders in the Tour of Flanders. They've been away for an awful long time now. The gap, as you can see, is 3 minutes and 53 seconds. They're now on to the 3rd climb of the day, the Old Quaremont, and this will test them now. We'll see just who is really strong in this breakaway. It consists of Carlos Barredo, Francis Mourey, Magnus Backstedt, winner of Paris-Roubaix. He's the biggest bike rider in the breakaway here, and Constantino Zabaya and David Boucher. There was a rider here, Samuel Marzoli from Lamprey. He's gone back now. And these 5 now will see the climb first. It starts reasonably smooth, Paul, then you hit the cobblestones.
It starts reasonably smooth, but you know, in the main field, this road here is so narrow. In fact, there's no room for more than 4 or 5 riders across, which is why you've got to be well placed on this climb. I'm starting to get goosebumps now, because to me, this is where the race starts. Not with these 5 guys that we're looking at, but you can't imagine the nervousness in the main field behind, because those guys know this is when the race starts. This is when the action really starts to go. Everyone throws caution to the wind. That's the start of the cobblestones. Not a battle for these 5, but you just wait for 3 minutes and 36 seconds. Yes. It's going to be completely different.
And just look at the speed of the peloton now as they race for that very narrow road. They'll have to come right down. Riders at the front. If you're not in the first 30, 40 riders, then you're going to be in big trouble, because there will be riders slipping and sliding. Gears will be jamming. They are absolutely flying towards this climb now. Here's life on the Old Quaremont for the leaders. Kop van der Wedstrijd, head of the race. They're looking for the smooth road, then find it turns against them. They've no choice but to get back on the cobblestones and bounce the way up, and it bites just about there, that climb, as they come up into the town of what is just a small village really of Quaremont, with a nice little coffee shop on the right-hand side, if you're not in a hurry. But today, I thought there's been a crash there as they come round the corner. Lots of riders also gone down there. and it looked to me as though that was
Brochard.
Van Summeren. Laurent Brochard is the rider in blue, trying to straighten his bike out, and one rider there, and I hope it's not Stuart O'Grady. No, I don't think it was, but his teammate has stopped with him there. It was a Cofidis rider. There's the crash again, and it's all on the right-hand turn into the Quaremont, where the Brochard wrestling with it to untangle his bike there to get back into the action. And the breakaway itself has started to split up now, as it's Bagstead driving at the front. Francis Mourey has gone off the back there.
Tom Boonen, we've got around that corner safely, and look how clever Eric Decker is. There's no need to battle now for the guys who've got the top 15, 20 places, because in fact there is nowhere to overtake on this road. Eric Decker, as we said earlier, Phil, very canny bike rider, puts himself in the right place at the right time. This man here is having a hard time. David Boucher, he's off the back. This is the flat part of the course. They've gone up the steepest part. It's 11% at the bottom of the climb. But this is where it really starts to get very difficult, because this is a false flat, and as soon as you come out of the town here of Quaremont, you're out into the open fields, and that's when the big strong bike riders start to really kick in. One of those guys who went down must have been Nico Eickhout, and he was a big pre-race favourite. He's ridden very well over the last couple of months, but he must have gone down very hard.
Opgeven means given up, which means he's come straight out of the race. So that, I think, was the rider we saw on the floor there, where his teammate stopped to try and give him a hand. That's bad luck, because Eickhout is on tremendous winning form just now, and he's a man for Belgium. He doesn't win anywhere else. He just stays in his own country and rides superbly.
Eric Zabel over on the right-hand side, nice and comfortable too. You see he will have picked his way right through that main field. 2.2 kilometres in length, the old Quaremont. Only an average of 4.2%, but it's at the bottom that it really kicks in with that 11% gradient.
It's a nasty little climb, but the boys who... all the racing's done before they get to the climb. There's Peter Van Petegem peeping into our picture now. So we've got Boonen, Van Petegem, Zabel, three real favourites to win this race, showing yet again their intelligence of riding at the front of the bunch.
In about 15th place as well, I saw Armstrong. There's Hincapie over to the right-hand side. He knows this race. And by the way, Brussels-Kern, the race that he won, actually goes over this climb as well. So Hincapie will be feeling very much at home here in Belgium. And let's not forget, he spent a lot of time living here in the early part of his career when he lived in a small town of Gullegem, just outside of Kortrijk, with Frankie Andreu.
Now we're seeing the peloton just nicely under control here now. Steady tempo riding being done by Quick Step. Tom Boonen just wanting to sit there in third wheel. Just behind him is Van Petegem. Meanwhile, at the top of the climb, there are only three riders left now. Barrido is the one at the back. Zabea is on good form. He was third in Paris-Nice overall, but he's not as known as a single-day rider. He's a multi-day rider, but he'll be a good ally for Bagstead just now. Here's Life's Not So Pleasant in the peloton, as they're not very far behind now. They're saying 3 minutes, so that's what it must be, but they're also on the climb as the other three just go over the top.
What a great day. You very rarely see such a beautiful day for the Tour of Flanders. A lot of the Flemish will probably complain, Phil, by saying it's not a real Tour of Flanders, because it should be raining, it should be wet, it should be windy.
Picture.
But it is a great picture for the sport. It really shows off the Flanders here this afternoon. These men here on the front for Quick Step, just thinking about the man in third position there, Tom Boonen. And I asked him before the start if he thought he was a little bit too young to win this race. He said, well, I'm hoping to prove that you can win this race if you're less than 30 years of age.
Yes, that's right. I think it's the last four winners have been over 30. Well, we'll see.
Well, you need the experience in a race like this, and you also need to be a tough man as well. Riders like Andre Schmil, riders like Johan Museeuw knew all about this bike race. But one regret, I suppose, at the end of his career would have to be Sean Kelly, who was so close to winning this race on a number of occasions. In fact, he finished second once in the sprint to Adrie van der Poel, but he never quite got that elusive win.
No, he was second in 84, 86 and 87. And Sean Kelly now not too far away from us, commentating for a European channel. And probably living every pedal rev with these bike riders, because this undoubtedly was his biggest disappointment of his career. He never won La Ronde, and he won just about everything else worth having except the Tour de France. He even won what it was until Eric Zabel came along, a record number of green jerseys, and he once finished fourth in that event as well. So there's the group now. They're just over the painful section of the old Quaremont, so he's set course now for the Peterberg. And that'll be 80 kilometres from the finish when we get there. So we're through the Quaremont, but there's still plenty of cobbles to conquer and a long way to the finish. Here's what's in store for you later in the show. Sunday's coverage of the 89th edition of the Tour of Flanders. American Lance Armstrong is racing this event for the first time since 2002. And this morning, we caught up with the 6-time Tour de France champion just before the race.
Well, the last few days, and try to help the boys.
This is a race that's always motivated. You always seem to ride well when you come up to Flanders.
Well, I've never been there, you know. I'm always, a couple of years ago, I was close to the last selection, but you know, I wasn't in the front. I wasn't that close enough to really feel it. So hopefully, I get a feel today.
Talking to a couple of your teammates just before the start there, and they said, yeah, George Hincapie is going well, Stein de Volder is, but watch out for Lance.
I paid him to say that.
Lance Armstrong there, enjoying a chat with Paul Sherwin, and he's looking forward to a nice day of racing, I think. But we never know until he gets going exactly what he's going to do. We're now on the climb of the Paterberg with around about 80 kilometers to go, or 50 miles, and the group is still chasing at 2 minutes 44 seconds. 4 leaders now. They did split on the climb of the Old Quaremont, but one of them got back, Boucher, and they're riding pretty steady at the front. But look at this, Paul, they're driving now by Tom Boonen's Quick Step squad.
Well, Boonen himself being very serious on the right-hand side there, always at the front in these dangerous moments. Struggling a little bit as the 20% gradient starts to kick in. Eric Zala riding well up at the front end of the main field all of the time, but still, when we looked down from the helicopter a few moments ago, that was a very large main field that certainly hasn't started to split up yet at all.
Well, the gap is coming down, but that's not the main object of the exercise right now. They expect to catch those. It is just to keep position at the head of the race on the climbs of the day. This is the 4th climb of 17, remember. And although the gap continues to fall, they're more concerned with position in the peloton. Further back, it is total chaos now, and it's survival of the fittest.
Survival of the fittest. Ride at the front end if you can. If you drop back to 25th or 30th place, move up as quickly as you can to stay up at the front of the race and out of danger. The window, Phil, is starting to pick up quite a bit, and that's going to be a problem later on in the event for a lot of these riders. O'Grady there just going through a fair way back.
Down. Yeah.
A long way back for him. That's Martin Dimbacker going through as well, a very serious professional bike rider. Rolf Aldag in the pink there for T-Mobile, paying for the efforts that he'd put in earlier on for the team. Still, if we pull back and wait, there's a lot of riders still in contention here. It certainly hasn't yet started to split up and kick in.
Gaps are opening at the back end now. The South African sprinter Robbie Hunter jammed his gears and his chain. He went back for service. We haven't seen him since. It's a fact of life now that if you have a mechanical or a flat tire at this stage of the race, the chances are you will be on the short route to the changing rooms, because by the time your car helps you, you simply can't catch up again. The hills are coming every 4 or 5 kilometers now, and just as you recover, you get hit again. It's not so easy at the back, is it?
It certainly is. Dominic McKenzie there having a problem and having to stop and restart, and restarting at 20%. Gradient is certainly not very easy at all. But you mentioned about going for an early shower or an early bath. Well, in fact, most of the riders here in the Tour of Flanders, if they have a problem, they'll usually actually ride back to the finishing line in Meribek, because at any one point now, they're never really very much more than 35 kilometers to the finish, because this race just zigzags along this stretch of little Flandrian mountains between here and Ninova and Meribek, the finish.
That's right. You may wonder sometimes how we know when riders have given up, and it's usually because they've just ridden past our commentary box and there's still 2 hours to race, because there are shorter routes back to the finish where we're commentating from, of course. 2.5 minutes will give them no cause for concern back in the peloton. This has been a good show of force by Magnus Backstedt, principally of this breakaway. I'm sure he's using this race now as preparation for Paris-Roubaix next week. When he gets caught, I would expect he will abandon, but you never know. Time for a short break, but plenty more to come from the Tour of Flanders. The Tour of Flanders on OLN Cyclism Sundays. American George Hincapie is riding with the support of Lance Armstrong to try and get that elusive Classics win here in Flanders. He spoke to us this morning at the start line.
Yeah, definitely. Lance brought me into his room last night and was talking about the tactics, and it was funny. Johan came in, he's like, wait, the meeting's tomorrow morning in the bus. But you know, Lance is very excited to be here, and it's great for us. It's great for me personally to have him here. So we just hope that we can do a really good day today.
The important thing about Flanders, though, is to have a lot of men at the end.
Yeah, it's very important to have as many teammates as possible at the end, which we haven't had that in the past, and I think this year we can have that.
Well, it's a lovely day for George Hincapie to win a big race, I must say. Of course, the Paris-Roubaix next week is the one he really aims at. But who knows? If he finds himself in a position today at the head of the race towards the end, I'm sure he'll have a go for the win. These are the 4 leaders now as they approach, the 4 leaders approaching the climb now of the famed CAMEMBERT climb. This is the 5th climb of the day, and while we look at these 4 leaders, we now know that there is a group of just over 30 riders clear of the field. It's caused by the pacemaking of Quick-Step. It is a very serious breakaway containing Tom Boonen and indeed Peter van Petegem. What we're waiting for, Paul, is to see who is there on the Discovery Channel team. We have seen a couple of jerseys, but we don't know who they are yet.
I think I caught a good sign there of Yaroslav Ekimov. He's always enjoyed this bike race. In fact, he's done very well in it in the past. But I wouldn't be surprised to spot Lance Armstrong in that group, because he was very attentive over the Old Quaremont. You see just how difficult this climb is. The riders here are very lucky that there is not a damp film of water on the road here this afternoon, as Magnus Backstedt is all over that machine. Constantino Zabaya on the right-hand side looks reasonably comfortable, if you can be comfortable at 20%. And Boucher, I think, finally, Phil, has paid the toll of being in what I like to call the early morning breakaway. I don't think he'll make contact again.
No, I think this time it is curtains for him, and Maggie, as we affectionately call him, is going to have to work very hard to hold on now. They need him up front once we get over the climb, of course, so they don't want to leave him too far behind. But this is a very, very steep climb. And the crowd being put behind the fence of the local field there to let the riders see the whole of it. It's as far as you can see, and that is the top. But it is so steep. Here's that peloton now of some 30 riders. And Quick-Step are in big numbers here. We need to get down amongst it, but our cameras aren't allowed at this minute as they swing now towards the start of the CAMEMBERT as well. There are a number of splits, and I would think a little bit of panic going on down there now, with some favourites like Boonen and van Petegem having made the split.
There's got to be panic for a lot of riders, because it was actually on the downhill that this race split like it did. In a bit of time, we might be able to get in there and just see who is present. And as you can see there, 680 meters the climb, 20% at its maximum. And Eric Decker.
Eric Decker's there.
Very sensible bike rider. Tom Boonen, we know, was there. It was his team who did the majority of the pacemaking. And I've got a funny feeling that is Ekimov just there in about 6th or 7th place.
Well, there are 3 riders that I can see, Paul, from Discovery.
Here's the rest of the
now
troops.
This is the main field closing in rather quickly, so it's not so decisive. The lone Norwegian flag on the left is for Thor Hushovd, and he's not in this group because we would have seen him in his champions jersey. He'll be possibly in the 2nd group.
Nasty climb.
They look close,
climb.
you know, but this is so steep, this climb. They're not actually as close as they appear.
Around about 30 seconds actually from this group to the 2nd group. Now there you can see Boonen in 2nd place, looking very strong. It's like
both almost climbing into the television set here to see who they are. There's George, Big George confirmed, going through. Armstrong not here now.
Stein de Volder is there as well, just tagging on the back of the group. But that gap has come down pretty dramatically here, and we get a chance to see who's riding across. It's Armstrong in the middle. Look at him, the way he's riding
Armstrong
those cobbles.
very close to rejoining.
Battling that bike. There he is, right in the middle.
And Stuart O'Grady also trying to get up. So they're trying to repair the damage. We don't know how the split came, but it wasn't on the climb. It was over the top. Maybe there'd been a tumble we didn't see, but the split was suddenly there.
Very strange split that formed, but I have a feeling that the top 10 or 15 riders from that 2nd group may well just get the junction once we go over the top here of the CAMEMBERT. An incredible climb with a lot of history attached to it.
Didn't see any walkers there, but I'll tell you, it won't be long before 1 or 2 try to exercise their feet near the end of the field.
There's a walker for you, Phil.
Oh, I didn't mean to say that, of course, because whenever you do it, that happens, doesn't it?
If you stop, it is very, very difficult to get going on cobblestones at 25%. And this man here, I think, has decided the better part of valor is to walk up and try and get going again at the top.
Sometimes you can walk as fast as they can ride, but it's difficult to get going again. Anyway, there's a little bit of a coming togetherness. This is the 30. Those 5 have climbed away from the 30 just now.
Oh, it hurts. It really hurts, this climb. It is a horrible climb, and if you're not feeling all that good, It's like a man with a big hammer just standing in front of you, banging you all over the top of your crash helmet. And these guys, I don't think we'll see the front again in the Tour of Flanders. We have, strangely enough, had a very serious sorting out between the Paterberg and the Koppenberg, and that was actually on the flatter part of the route.
There's so much ahead that can destroy the field. They've hit it so hard today. It was Telecom doing the work, then it was Quick Step, and Discovery have had the moment with riders right up there as well. But as we now move rapidly towards the front, it looks like these two groups will rejoin here. In fact, there's no big effort being put in, but it just shows you the strength of Tom Boonen, because he used it well. And also it's Andreas Clear there, the Telecom boy, looking over his shoulder at the back. And is that Van Petegem alongside them as well, the Lotto rider?
Looks like Van Petegem.
It does. But he's marking Boonen, you see, everywhere he goes.
He will. It's just like in the old days. Van Petegem used to mark Johan Musea right down to the wire. I think he's changed his allegiance now to marking down the man who they regard as the new young lion of Flanders, Tom Boonen. Riding very well for a young professional bike rider, Phil, because normally they say you've got to have a lot of experience to do well in the Tour of Flanders, but he may well be disproving that point here this afternoon, because he's riding so far with so much confidence at 71 kilometers to go.
But he's such an incredibly confident rider. He comes to this race already with 5 victories this season, and he won 24 races last year. And he's had 26 wins in total. Well, he's had 31 wins if you include all of his victories since he turned professional back in 2002, which is not very long ago. And he's only 24 years of age. Hopes of Forest just to reaching the 50 kilometers from the finishing point. Marcus Burkhardt here trying to liven up the chase from behind. They're having some difficulty in finishing off the 3-man breakaway. They constantly have, they've been as close as 13 seconds. Now Zabaya has gone away, and this time he's got the better of Barredo and certainly Magnus Bagstead. They've just split this minute on the climb. I think they'll still come back together again. But Zabaya, he has ridden superbly today. This is the move. He decides to jump away. A last desperate effort, I think, in the dying throes of the breakaway.
Yep, big acceleration there. He just, in fact, accelerated away from the man who was with him, Barredo. Barredo won't give up, and it's a little bit deceptive here. It's such a nice day out on the roads of the Ronde van Vlaanderen, but that wind, I think, Phil, is starting to eat into the riders' energy levels, because this is turning out to be a pretty tough race. Although it's not nasty weather with wind and rain, I think that wind is actually just starting to really eat into the riders' levels.
It's almost as if the peloton now, having had the flurry of attacks and found they couldn't break the spirit of this group, they've now reached a little bit of a truce here, and it's going to be a huge showdown if we get to the Mur de Grammont in a group of this size. And it's T-Mobile who have been laying down the gauntlet. Earlier we had the infighting with the Lotto rider Van Petegem and the Quick Step rider Tom Boonen, and they all came back together. Now we've got another attack going off here.
Well, don't think it's going to be too much of an easy race on the run in towards the finish, because with 51 kilometers to go, we've still got 7 climbs to go before the end. And obviously the most difficult one of all is that one called the Mur de Grammont at around about 60 kilometers to go.
Well, I'll tell you what, this is how favourites lose bike races now, because this is Alessandro Ballan. He's another youngster here. He's only had 1 win, but he's on form, and they're going to do well to mark him.
Only 1 win, but in fact that was the first stage of the 3 days of La Panna, a race that he led right up until the final individual time trial. Look at that. Excuse me, I'm coming by. This is the difference between speed. He looks back there to see the shoulders of Marcus Burkhardt, and I think he said, come on, this is a good move. We've got a gap over the front end of the peloton, and we might just catch out a few of the top leaders here.
Well, Ballan has joined there. Ballan turned professional last year, and as far as I know, Marcus Burkhardt has only just turned pro for T-Mobile. He's 21 years of age, and he's just been caught by Ballan, and they're going to get on with the job in hand. Zabaya now on his own, and I would never have predicted this.
Kop van der Wegstrijd, that's confirmation. This is the front of the race, just jiggling his thighs a little bit. That's just to loosen them up, try and get a little bit of that excess lactic acid out of them before he sets himself up for the next climb of the day. Here's Maggie Bagstead. He's been picked up by the 2 chasers, so the race situation is Zabaya, who is being followed by Barredo on the road, and now this 3-man group. But the main field is still only hovering at 30 seconds in arrears.
Looking now at the riders here as they battle away along here on the Steenberg climb. 15 seconds is to the chasing group, I presume now, which contains Stuart O'Grady and Eric Zabel. This is the main field just behind that group, and we're looking at riders at the moment spread all over the climb. This is Alessandro Ballan, who has proved to be a pretty much of a powerhouse as he's trying to reach the leader on his own.
That's a good move by him. He's got himself halfway across the gap. He will feel very confident after his win just less than a week ago on the first stage of the 3 days of La Panna. In fact, rocked up by finishing second in the overall standings as well. He only lost that in the final day's time trial, which was taken out by Jatislav Ekimov. But the overall win went to the Discovery Channel rider Stijn de Volder, who was a bit of a find, I think, for Discovery Channel. Now you can see the white flag is up once again. A little bit of a truce before we start to get back down to the art of climbing.
Still sat at the back here, the sprinter, and poor old Luke Roberts, they're covered in mud, so we'll see whether those mud baths work now, because he's pretty good looking to start with, but he really did have a nasty tumble along with a couple of other guys into what appears to have been a very muddy ditch indeed. He did well to get into this group. He's done some good riding back there to be in this selection.
Psychologically, if you're up for a race like this, and a little incident like that's not going to knock out the stuffing. And Luke Roberts, we've known him for quite a long time. He's a tough bike rider, and he's a kind of man who seriously wants to make the change from being a top track rider into a top road rider, very much like the man who has led the way in changing from being one of the top track cyclists in the world to being a good road rider, and that's Stuart O'Grady.
Well, here's a good quiz question. When was the last time a Spanish rider led the Tour of Flanders at this stage of the day? As Zabaya now tries desperately to survive. He can't possibly stay away, but you never know. And if Ballan gets up to him, that'll make an interesting tandem. But there's the gap, 8 seconds, and the group is nearly on there now as they swing around.
Still the same old elastic. Accelerate, slow down, see what damage has been done, and take a look back over your shoulder to see the state of affairs, and then just go again and again. And shortly, I'm quite confident we're going to actually see a breakaway start to form here, because there's been so many attacks, and sorry about that, but we're trying to bring all of the action. Looking a bit further back, you can see this man Ballan is getting himself across the gap, and very shortly he will join up there with Constantino Zabaya. But looking down the field there, Phil, that looked a lot more than 10 or 15 seconds to me.
It did. I wasn't sure whether they were tucked in off the camera lens there, but we'll find out. This is a fine piece of cycling. Lampre will be delighted with this. The times they've come to this race and gone away with nothing, but now they've got a man in the front. Ballan joins now at 47 kilometers to go, the top of the Steenberg, and we've got two riders in the lead. They're showing his appreciation for the passion that the Belgians have for the sport of cycling. Another rider who knows all about Belgian cycling is two-time Tour of Flanders winner Peter van Petegem. Paul Sherwin tells us more.
35-year-old de Wittemon Lotto rider Peter van Petegem epitomizes Belgian cycling. Hard-working, tactically savvy, gritty and competitive to the end. In his early years, he tried riding the Tour de France without much success, and after 14 years as a professional, he's built a fierce reputation as a specialist in long, hard one-day races, especially those on his home roads of Belgium.
All the classics, Milan-San Remo, Tour of Flanders, Paris-Roubaix. These are the really most important races.
And when it comes to the Tour of Flanders, Van Petegem can never be counted out. In 8 starts, he has 7 top 10 finishes, and he's won the race twice in 1999 and 2003.
And Van Petegem will win this now because he just did a perfect sprint. There is no way, but I wonder if there's a second pair of legs there for Van der Broek. No, there isn't. Van Petegem gets his second win here, and Frank Van den Broek gets the second place finish. A repeat indeed of the result which they had back in 1999.
He knows every twist and bump in the road, and he knows how to outfox his opponents in the closing kilometers. While on paper he is winless since 2003, any rider who ignores Peter Van Petegem ignores him at his peril.
Well, thanks, Paul. And Van Petegem, of course, today, if he wins, he'll be only the 5th cyclist in the race's history to win this event on 3 occasions. So we're coming to the top of the Leberg right now, 42 kilometers to go. There are just a handful of chasers, and the peloton are now closing the field down. 35 seconds at the spread. This is the capture now primarily of Magnus Bagstedt and Buchholz, who's leading here, and the other early breakaway in Beredo. They're about to be wiped by that group containing Boonen, Piet van Petegem, and George Hincapie and Roger Hammond. They are in that group for sure. No Lance Armstrong is there, I'm afraid. He's just seen the men he expects to ride well get to the front on his team. And now is going to be a reshape here on the Leberg, leaving just 2 riders out front, Zabaya and the man who caught him, Ballan.
Well, it's all back together in the no man's land. There's still 2 leaders off the front end of the group, and looking back there, Constantino Zabaya is not worried at all of going to the front and doing his share of the pacemaking, but Ballan is riding very well, Phil, after that performance in the 3 days of La Panna. That was a serious indication that he had good form, and he looks good on the bike as well. He looks very comfortable. He's not indicating any signs of fatigue, but I think the main field that little bit more serious now as they go up the Leberg, because all of these guys know that once they've gone over the Leberg, they'll drop into Brakel, and then it's over the Berendries. And I wouldn't be surprised to see a vicious attack coming from Peter van Petegem, very much in the style of Johan Museo of old.
It's got to come soon. There is now all of a sudden a very tense atmosphere in the Tour of Flanders this year. Nobody wants to move up and set the pace right now, because they know rearing ahead of them is Valkenburg, Ten Bosch, the Muir and the Bosberg. And that could be it. The Valkenburg climb, by the way, hasn't been in the Tour of Flanders since 1996.
Don't discount Lance Armstrong,
is
because
that
in
there?
about 15th place there is Armstrong riding pretty much to the front end of the group, and one or two of his teammates, Phil, said before the start, don't discount Lance in a race like this.
I take my hat off, Paul. We scanned this peloton time and time again, and we didn't see him, but there he seems to be now, riding midway down. And looking at that, Paul, I think Discovery have about 5 riders here.
And they've ridden sensibly. They've always been in the splits of this group without having to do too much work on the front end of the main field. So too is Eric Zabel there in the pink jersey. He's also been very attentive. That gap of Ballan and Zabaya stretched out to 46 seconds, but if you just caught a glimpse there, that was the outskirts of Brakel just in the distance, and that indicates that the next big climb of the day is going to come up quite shortly, and that's the climb of the Berendries.
Well, we've done the Steenberg climb as we now head up to kilometer 41 to go.
Frédéric Guédon of FDJ.com in the white jersey on the front here. He too has started to ride quite well, and he's another rider who must be in excess of 30 years of age. He won Paris-Roubaix a couple of years ago. A major surprise, sat on the back of the group. Nobody really paid very much attention to him, but in the sprint he got it all right and got himself the win. Now Ekimov is on the front of the group there, doing the work to pull this back for Discovery Channel. And the fact that they've got a lot of riders present down towards the end is an indication here that they're feeling quite confident. And Hincapie has always complained a little bit in the past because he hasn't had too many teammates around him, and this occasion
he can't complain today. No, he can't, because they're all there now, and they've got a lot of cards they can play here. They're watching the inter-rivalry between the Belgian cyclists, and T-Mobile quite clearly desperate to get a victory and wipe away the wreckage of the start of the 2005 season. Haven't won a race to this moment, and they can profit from all of these other team tactics right now. If the captain is there, Armstrong, and we do believe he is, he'll be back up to chase them all along very soon. Obviously there was a regrouping a little while back now, and Lance has come up in that group. As we look here now toward the top of the Berendries, it looks like an attack by Ballan, who's gone clear here of Zabaya, the hero of the day, the last of the 6 breakaways to wave farewell to the front of the Tour of Flanders, with the field 41 seconds back. Alessandro Ballan, make a note of his name. He finished second in the recent 3 days of De Panne, where he won a stage as well. And it's just down the road from where we're racing today, that event. This is life in the peloton, and now they're getting a little bit twitchy. 39 seconds is all the gap is, and Discovery have a lot of firepower back there. We estimate possibly 5 riders in that group from Discovery Channel.
Difficult moves here. Everybody is starting to get very nervous, waiting for the moves, wanting to be present in the moves, but wanting to hold back that little bit of energy for the big final push over the Mur de Grammont, where you have to have all of your capabilities in your legs when you get to that climb of the day. You can just see, looking over here, one of the riders from Liquigas has decided, well, that's it. Bar the shouting, I might as well go back into the main field because I don't have the legs to stay with that young man who's attacked from Rabobank.
33 seconds. That gap seems to have been stuck there. But look at this now. There is the man in the passive face wearing the armbands of a world champion. Lance Armstrong is just warning them what might come in July. Just get a feel of his back wheel now. He's come back into this race from the second group somehow, but right now he is doing this for George Hincapie. Look at the face of Ekimov, third wheel. Hincapie is in there but staying in the comfort of the peloton.
Well, that's answered any doubts that anybody had after his 144th place in the prologue of Paris-Nice. Lance Armstrong is back, getting himself nice and comfortable, getting himself ready for the showdown, and he's got a lot of teammates around him. Yatislav Ekimov is there, and a little bit further back, George Hincapie will be there, and I would think Hincapie, Phil, will be waiting for the Mur de Grammont. But Armstrong looking very good and decided after a 24th place just a couple of days ago in Paris-Camembert.
We just picked it up. This is Cañada, I think, who's gone down.
I don't know how that happened.
No, it might have been a bike change, actually. I'm not sure whether he fall or just threw his bike down.
Well, anyway, just after the right-hand turn at the top of Berendry, so he probably did.
No, it wasn't. Yeah, he fell. Here we go.
Just at the back end of the group, and
he just lost it. Yeah,
he just dropped it going
probably
around that corner.
Probably hit a patch of dust or something. Ouch.
Well, he's going to have to hope that the team car's not too far behind. Now they're dropping off the top of Berendries. They drop down into the outskirts of Brakel, into the small town of Neder-Brakel. Then they will face themselves up to the Valkenburg, and then it's the Ten Bosch, which comes at around about 26 kilometers to go. And this is the time, I think, Phil, in between these two climbs when Ballan has to try and build up himself a fairly sensible advantage if he wants to get to the bottom of the Mur de Grammont with a 40 or 50 second advantage.
Well, this would be a win of the proportions of a Johan Museo if he were to stay away. This is Karsten Kroon, they are telling us, from Rabobank, a good climber, gets the odd result. Very strong Rabobank rider, perfect team man. But we wouldn't expect him to be winning the Tour of Flanders today. I think the winner still will be coming from that big field behind. We're looking down on the long, thin line of what is still a very large bunch here in the Tour of Flanders. A couple are up the road. Ballan is still in the lead, 54 seconds the spread, and those three riders down there just picked up Constantino Zabaya, who was in the early morning breakaway, and that is Zabel and Roberto Petito, and that is all the people who are left in the Tour of Flanders.
False tempo on the front, I would hope, being set there by T-Mobile. Now this man, for the first time, Phil, looks like he is beginning to suffer, rocking his body a bit, trying to find the strength and the added weight to go down with the thighs to tick that gear over as he makes himself suffer to get to the summit of the Valkenburg. But he's still, once he's gone over this climb, got 3 more climbs to go, and the next 2 are very difficult. The Ten Bosch is a hard climb. It's a steep, smooth surface climb, and then he's got to be thinking in the back of his mind, I've still got to do this over the Mur de Grammont.
This is why you love the Belgian fans, because they do cheer everybody in the bike race. They love a winner, but they'll cheer the man who goes over the line in last place with the same enthusiasm. It's a sport that they love, and this is another one he can tick off now as he gets towards the top of the Valkenburg, leaving him just about 20 miles to go to the finish.
You could almost feel the relief coming out of his body once the road had leveled out and started to become flat again, and he's changed the gears, started to roll over the massive gears again to pick himself up to an average speed of around about 45 kilometers an hour. The flags are ripping across here now. There's another move coming here from T-Mobile. Now this is a bit of a surprise because Eric Zabel is in front, and I'm not quite sure who that T-Mobile rider is who's moving. Decker hasn't got it there. He couldn't stay on the wheel. He's gone back, but that's Tom Boonen, the youngster, 24 years of age.
Guess who's behind him? Oh, no, it's a Rabobank. I thought it was in fact PETEGEM.
It is Van Petegem.
I thought he was. So he's just marking Boonen. He's convinced Boonen is the man to beat in this race. Stefan Weisserman has seen this as a great possibility. Van Petegem moved up there. He's at home right now, Phil. He knows all of these roads. Boonen is with him as well. Well, that's the top 3 boys.
There's Zabel.
And really, Discovery Channel have got to chase this down straight away. They mustn't allow a gap to open, otherwise they'll ride away from them. Because this is a superb group now as they get together at the front. 5 riders here. Ballan still out on front, of course. Stefan Westerman was very laconic at the start this morning. Bit philosophical, but said his form was good. He loved the thought he had #1 on his bike. Look at Boonen realising what he's got, and Van Petegem will work with him now. This is Van Petegem coming through. This is an important move now. This reduces all the race favourites if they can go clear.
Not only is Van Petegem tough physically, but he's tough mentally in a situation like this. He's seen the damage done. He realises now he's inside of 32 kilometres to go. Two riders here in this group from T-Mobile must certainly come to the front, but hats off to Erik Zabel. He's the man
brilliant.
who's been looking for this move all afternoon.
But look at the face of Boonen. Boonen is very pained there. He really is hurting. I'm not sure he's feeling as good as he was an hour ago. But Petito sits at the back, doesn't want to help anymore. And I do believe there is a counter move from the peloton. It could well be coming back.
Somebody's halfway across the gap there. You can just see that rider at around about 50 metres. But it is so difficult at the end of a long race like this to close down that gap finally. And looking back, they do seem to have opened up a pretty serious gap over the main field, which again has been reduced in numbers quite dramatically by that climb there, the Valkenberg. They'll be setting themselves up now for the 10 Boss, and that is where Peter Van Petegem, I think, will start to feel comfortable. He's just almost at home, about a kilometre away from his hometown.
Now let's talk about the situation, Paul, that's just emerged. It's all over the press in the United States. It's penetrated the press in Great Britain too. And that's this lawsuit that Lance seems to have got himself involved in now with Anderson, former personal assistant, who now seems to think that he can prove the fact that Lance is taking drugs.
Well, I know it's a very difficult thing, because if you read all the information that we've got to hand, he's actually making an insinuation. There's no proof, there's no hard evidence.
No.
It's one man's word against another, and I'm really not sure how that can go down in a court of law.
But throughout Lance's cycling career, this has always been the case. Lance categorically denies he doesn't take drugs, yet it does seem to be all of these people prepared to spend money to see if they can prove the fact that he does.
It's a difficult thing. I think when you're on the top of a pedestal, everybody wants to knock you off. And the difficult thing with Lance Armstrong is a lot of people have tried to knock him off on many occasions. He probably is, and he would admit himself, Phil, he is the most tested athlete in the world. And nobody's ever found anything. And they've, in fact, even stored some of his blood and urine samples in the past to try new testing technology. And they've still never been able to prove a thing.
You're absolutely right. Well, it's just something else for Lance Armstrong to worry about at the most crucial time of the year for him. Just look at these pictures here now. At 27 kilometres to go, Lance Armstrong hits the front of this group in an effort now, a desperate effort to drag George Hincapie back into this race. 6 riders lead: Clear, Van Petegem, Zabel, Boonen, Petito and Ballan as we start the climb at 10 Boss. It's only 450 metres, but it hurts, and it might well shed Ballan at the back here.
And the man doing the pacemaking at the front on home turf there is Peter Van Petegem, right on the front with Clear, Zabel, Petito's up there, Ballan, and of course Tom Boonen. But behind, the job of work that Lance Armstrong is doing is absolutely remarkable. I can only say one thing, Phil, right now. I hope Jan Ullrich's not watching.
Well, indeed, but indeed too, the Belgians have put their top 2 men in this breakaway by sheer effort at the right time. This is going to be a terrific race. I'm not sure why we're getting this counter-attack here from Ivanov, who's on the T-Mobile squad with 2 men in the lead. That doesn't make a lot of sense to me, but George Hincapie in 3rd place will be saying thanks very much.
Well, I'm really not sure about that at all. You've got 2 men in a leading group of 6 riders. That is very strange. I think Armstrong has done his job for the day and said, OK, George, take over now. I want you to win this race. I've pulled it all back. Now you have to act as a man. Now you've got to show that you're the leader of this team in the one-day classics. And there he is, right on the wheel of Sergei Ivanov, 19 seconds. If you've got it, George, go for it now.
Well, I would probably shoot Ivanov if I was in the T-Mobile team right now, because he started a move that's taken George Hincapie up to them, but that's their problem. George will be very happy, as they now know they must reach that group. 18 seconds. They're closing in on the leaders. Clear, Van Petegem, Zabel, Boonen, Petito. Ballan has ridden well to hold on to this group because he was the lone leader, and he's hung on to the back. I think he's a rider of absolute class we're going to see an awful lot of in the next couple of years. He's still very young.
26 kilometres to go to the finish. That's around about 10 kilometres to go to the top of the Mur de Grammont. There's a little bit of flatland here in between these two climbs, and these riders will look over their shoulders. It's up to T-Mobile, who have got the majority of riders present, to do most of the work on the front end of the group. HINCAPIE now coming across the gap. They've really put pressure on this main field, but they haven't actually split it. They've been put onto a defending role of Discovery Channel here, but George HINCAPIE knows he wants to get this win if he can. He hasn't had to do very much of an effort since the early part of the race. Now he has to pay.
He's got to do it now. He's running out of teammates. He's only got one left, in fact, and he's done his bit. And looks so Rolf Aldag is still there, but unlike Ivanov, he's not helping at all. But he's just jumped onto the Express. 20 seconds the gap. It's edging closer. But they've got to shut it down, because the next hill we reach is the dreaded Mur de Grammont. And if they're not on by then, I think we'll see Van Petegem and Boonen try to go for gold.
7 kilometers to the bottom of the climb of the Mur.
Still
16 kilometers to the top.
They've got to get up and sort it now. Petito here is still in the group. I'm not sure how well he's going. He's asked for a bottle to go up towards Ballan, I think. Yes, he has. That was very nice of him, as they're on rival teams. So I think they're both struggling a little bit here. They're catching on to the back wheel of 4 really good bike riders right now, 2 from the same team. I presume by the effort that Ivanov just made to try and catch him, he's looking for a different team next season, because he might well find he's getting one. Can't think why he tried to start a counter move against these 2 riders.
I can't understand at all why he did that. He maybe wasn't watching TV like we are and realized that he'd got 2 men in a leading group of 6. This is a very strong position for T-Mobile to be in. Eric Zabel, despite the number of attacks he's thrown in today, he really still does look very comfortable. Ballan paying a little bit for his efforts. As you can see, Petito on the back as well. Still, Phil, the gap is actually starting to climb up to 28 seconds. It may well be that Lance Armstrong pulled out just a little bit too early there, because George HINCAPIE and the rest of his team certainly haven't been able to pull that back. And the difficult situation they find themselves in is that there are a lot of the big teams represented in that group. On the left, you can see the Kop van de Wegstrijd, the race lead, and on the right, the Achtervolgers, the following group. And I tell you what, it's going to be a long, hard chase for HINCAPIE.
We're about to leave the streets of Gerardsbergen, and there's only one way out of this town in the Tour of Flanders. You are up the steep climb of the Mur de Grammont. The same 6 riders still dictate affairs. Ballan still sits at the back, but the driving forces are here. Despite the efforts of Lance Armstrong, the group behind has slipped away to 54 seconds. There's the profile. It's only just over half a mile or a kilometre in length, but boy, it's steep. It reduces grown professional cyclists to tears as they get towards the summit.
We haven't got to the steep part yet. We're going over the marketplace here, which is absolutely filled with people who've been watching most of this on a massive TV screen throughout the afternoon, waiting for these men to arrive. Another left-hand turn as they move away now from the marketplace, and then it's the right-hand turn that I think everybody in the sport of cycling knows. It's the right-hand turn that takes you onto the real nasty cobblestones of the final kilometre ascension up to the summit near the chapel.
Well, if only we could see the faces of those riders, where a camera's not allowed to go in front of the cyclists at this crucial stage. Look at the massive crowd here. They are holding it together right now and gaining 58 seconds at the moment, but no attacks coming at all. I expected Van Petegem to have a go here just to test the strength of Tommy Boonen, but they're all staying together. And take your hats off to Ballan. He has been on his own for so long. They've picked him up and he's still there, and he doesn't look like getting dropped.
Not yet, but Van Petegem, I think, will maybe just try and tickle the rest here once that road turns, sweeps round to the left-hand side, the steepest part of the Mur de Grammont, and that's where doesn't matter what your body's like, you've got to use everything just to try and stay in contact with the road. That's the right-hand turn. That's when the serious cobbles start, and you really then have to change to the complete and utter end of your sprockets. It's gone over the 1 minute mark now at 16 kilometers to go to the finish, and it looks to me as if George HINCAPIE and Discovery Channel are not going to get the win here this afternoon, unless, of course, they do something absolutely magic.
Well, even on the last 12 kilometers, it's a long way to the finish, and it's not all downhill, but there's no climbs on the road. That would be their last chance, but I think it's gone now. We're looking at the strong men getting to the front, and the man who forced this and forced it all of the time until it happened was Eric Zabel. the grand old man of cycling. I think he's won 187 bike races as a pro. Van Petegem, I'm not sure whether anybody's got the strength to attack each other now. They're going to go to the finish possibly as a group, or they're saving one big effort on the Bosberg, which is the final climb of the day. Van Petegem climbing very, very well, though. He's got a good, clean style there. And gritting his teeth there is Zabel, and behind him, Clear looks as though he's in trouble. And look at Boonen gritting his teeth. This is a huge effort, in fact, now by Van Petegem. He made it look so easy, and Boonen has recognised it. Belgium have got themselves two heroes today.
Two heroes. Van Petegem not looked for any help from anybody there. I tell you what, Tom Boonen had to turn himself absolutely and utterly inside out to stay in contact. Eric Zabel showing his older years, but he's not out for the count just yet. He's still got a chance to recover over the top here. This is the right-hand turn that's been added in the last couple of years. Petito just a little bit off the back. You know, that was a great ride up there by Peter Van Petegem. Now, this is a little bit further back at 58 seconds. There's HINCAPIE, but is it going to be just that little bit too late?
It's the last chance now. Big George tried to go, and the rider from CSC there was Vladimir Gusev from Russia. Another one of the new finds for Bjorn Ries's squad. HINCAPIE digging deep. He knows he's got to make everything count now. Catch this rider's win. In fact, he's going to take him on the climb and go for it. George might find himself chasing by himself in a moment. There's not much left to help him now. The moment of truth in the Tour of Flanders, when big men have been reduced to just club cyclists.
That's what it's all about. It's courage now. It's determination. This is the leading group of 4 riders. Kop van der Weegstraat, 15 kilometers to go. It's inside a minute, but it did appear from the front end of that group that HINCAPIE was going to try and ride across the gap himself. He has to throw caution to the wind. It's no good trying to save it now to sprint out for 5th or 6th place. If he wants to win this race, he's got to get across. And these riders here, Phil, are now moving up at swelling to 5 riders. Clear, I don't think will do very much, because he will wait to see whether or not Eric Zabel can come back, and Zabel is coming back.
The bold Eric Zabel will not give up here. He's attacked all day. He is entitled to feel tired, but he will not give up his chance of winning one race like the Tour of Flanders. He is fighting his way back, and with the Muur now behind them, the same 6 riders are together.
Just one climb to go, the Bosberg. In the old days, Edwig van Hooijdonk used to be known as the boss of the Bosberg, because that's where he laid his foundations to victory, as this group now reforms with 6 men at the front. I have to say, you're not supposed to take sides when you're commentating as a television commentator, but my fingers are crossed now for the man wearing number 8, Eric Zabel. What a victory it would be if he could get himself the win here, but I'm sure there's going to be another attack.
Well, Eric will try. He finished 4th in this event back in the year 2000. He is a rider who knows this course so well. Now there's only one climb between him and the finish.
Going now.
This is an attack by Eric Zabel on the Bosberg. A final throw by a brilliant bike rider who's attacked all day. He's hurt his own teammate Clear. Clear's about to get back on. Petito's in trouble. But this now is the effort by Zabel, and it looks as though Boonen has latched on. The gap is still at 53 seconds here. But this is a final attempt by Eric Zabel.
What a move here at the front. Peter Van Petegem responding directly there. Tom Boonen responding as well. Zabel at the back end of the group with Roberto Petito. The crowd here are going absolutely ballistic, but again, nobody's managed to get the gap. Now Boonen's going. Boonen is digging deep, and it looks as if Van Petegem was caught out on the wrong side, but he's tried to respond. He wants to come up to the wheel of the new 24-year-old champion of the Flemish people.
Well, Boonen, suffer he may be, but he's looking for that little ounce of extra pain, and he's got it. He's hurt 2 riders in the breakaway. Van Petegem, he just sticks onto this rider like a limpet. He is not going to let him go anywhere, and he's straight on his back wheel into his slipstream. Attack over as far as Tom Boonen and Van Petegem are concerned. A sigh of relief for Eric Zabel, but what about Ballan, who is riding superbly?
Once again with 12 kilometers to go to the finish, and 50 seconds in arrears is what's probably the remnants of that very large group, and George HINCAPIE probably didn't manage to slip away from them. He looked very comfortable on the slopes of the Muur de Grammont, but that's not really a great thing to do when you're 50 seconds in arrears.
And as all top cyclists know, No matter how dead on his feet or on his wheels a sprinter appears, you never take a sprinter to the finishing line, because all of a sudden he finds his second lease of life.
But Tom Boonen, Phil, there is not riding like a sprinter. He wants to get away on his own if he can. And I wonder if there's an entente cordiale amongst the Belgians to make sure that it's a Belgian wins on this occasion, because they were pretty much slammed in the press last year when the two Belgian riders chased each other down and gave the win to Germany and, of course, Stefan Wesemann.
Yes, and Wesemann laid to rest the ghost of Rudi Altig, who last won for Germany in 1964. 30 years on.
Tito moves Erik Zabel right on the wheel now. Zabel started to recuperate just a fraction. Boonen is going after all of these moves there in third place. But it's starting to hurt now, every one of these accelerations. Just look at Ballan. He's riding as if he can right on the edge of the road there, just to try and get a little bit of help from the slipstream of the rider in front of him, Andreas Clear, who I would think will make a move now once this group comes back together.
Or even 40 years on. That's a bit of a ride there, Paul. 1964, Rudi Altig. He's still around, still watching the big time bike races, former world champion and a great winner of stage of the Tour de France. Well, it looks as though Clear has now got himself back into the ticket collector's position to check the assess everybody, see what their strength is like. Petito always surprises me, but hang on, he does. Ballan, well, we don't know anything about this rider. He's a new pro and he's certainly on great form. Now, if the shadow boxing persists, of course, that will help the chasing group.
It certainly will. If they don't get themselves organised quite smartish, they could see the return of the main field in the final few kilometres. Peter van Petegem still, he's like a poker player there. He just sits around and waits for the final sprint of the day now, and psychologically he must be feeling quite comfortable with a situation like this. Although I wonder if Tom Boonen has got anything left in that sprint of his, because he's been such an aggressive rider throughout the stage.
Very difficult to pick a winner, you know, right now. Boonen is a superb finisher normally. He's got the wins under his belt already this year. He won 24 races last year, but still he's seen reason to attack rather than wait for the finish, so he can't be feeling that confident. It's always a very difficult finish to judge. It's a steady uphill to the line. You come off a right-hand bend as well. Zabel knows it, and he was beaten, and Zabel was a big sprinter at the time when he finished fourth a few years back in this event, and he was beaten. He misjudged the finish completely, went too early, and they all came over him.
Well, he must be thinking back to that time right now, and I wonder if he's wondering whether or not he can beat Tom Boonen. He beat Tom Boonen a couple of weeks ago, but that was for a lesser placing. But here right now, Van Petegem wants to try and get this gap if he can. He gets out of the saddle. Tom Boonen is all over his back wheel. And at the back there, it's Andreas Clear. Van Petegem, I think, wants to try and get this victory on his own if he can, because there's Tom Boonen now going over the top. What an unbelievable counter-attack that was, Phil.
Well, Boonen again. Now there's got to be a counter move, because this man is feeling rather frisky. And there's no counter move, and at 9 kilometers to go it comes, and I'm not sure whether that's Zabel who's made the move. I would think it probably is.
There's one of the riders from Telecom who've made the move, and it looks very much like the shape of Erik Zabel there. Trying to nail them back. Right on his wheel is Peter Van Petegem, but don't be surprised to see a move come from Van Petegem if it all comes back together. Tom Boonen, renowned really to us as a sprinter, is riding here like a true champion of the one-day races. This
will take him another notch up the ladder of all-time greats. It's a bit early to say he's an all-time great of Belgium cycling. There's the counter-attack, had to come. As they start, yes, had to be, because he's not going to let Tom Boonen get the prize if he can stop him, and so it had to come, and it could be putting Belgium in the top 2 positions in the race.
It's going to be a battle. If Van Petegem can make the contact there with Tom Boonen, what a sprint that's going to be down to the finish. And the other 4 riders here now, Andreas Clear has seen the danger. He knows now that everybody else is a spent force in this group, and Erik Zabel is going to have to defend. Boonen looks over his shoulder, under his arms there, to see if he can see the shadow of the man who's won the Tour of Flanders on 2 occasions coming up to him, but he's still got the gap. He's still got himself around about 100 meters advantage. Phil, this is a great performance by a 24-year-old.
It's amazing what a mature bike rider he is, but you know, we've seen a counter-attack there too by Andreas Clear, and the last time Clear won a race of any note, it was Ghent-Wevelgem, which is still to come later this week in 2003. On that occasion he beat the Australian Henk Vogels, and I remember Vogels congratulating him, and Clear said, you know, Henk, everybody needs a little bit of luck. Today I was lucky. Well, this man's leaving nothing to chance at all as Tom Boonen tries to push it home. From the end of the 256-kilometre 89th Tour of Flanders, Tom Boonen has made his move at 9 from the finish, and he's hanging on to 9 seconds. He's never won what used to be a World Cup Classic. He's won Gent-Wevelgem, that comes up on Wednesday. He's finished 3rd in Paris-Roubaix, but this will be without doubt the biggest win of his career, which has only started 3 years ago, and during that period he's won 31 races. Now, is this going to be the icing on the cake at 24 years of age? And I think it might be.
I think it might be. It's still holding up just inside of the 10-second mark. You see Peter van Petegem tickling the front end of the group there. Zabel now starting to recuperate right onto the wheel of the Belgian, feeling comfortable. Petito claws his way back. Andreas Clear, I think, is a spent force.
Either spent or he's got a problem there. He's looking down his bike. One thing's for sure, he's off the back of this group now, leaving Zabel the sole representative for T-Mobile. And in the twilight seasons for Eric Zabel, he's never had a podium position in the Ronde van Vlaanderen. His best finish is 4th, and today he's got what will probably be his last chance.
4 kilometers to go. Look at that long drag. It's a long, straight, wide open road here. That group behind can see this man all of the time. He keeps getting down there into a fairly aerodynamic position. He bobs around a bit. He's an aggressive rider. He's just hoping he can survive, and the disadvantage he has here, Phil, is these 4 riders can see that gaggle of cars and motorbikes right behind him, and they can use him to try and judge their effort. But this man, his body is saying, please stop, please surrender, don't let yourself do this much damage to me. But he wants to win the Tour of Flanders. He's a Flemish bike rider, and this is his World Championships.
He's on a nasty little drag here. He's got to get over the top and keep going. Those wonderful, massive legs, more like oak trees, as he stamps away. There's Van Petegem gone again on the left of the road. He was recuperating. He's still looking for the victory here. He's been a podium. Of course, he's won the race 3 times, as Peter, 2 times rather. As Peter, he's looking for a record equaling 3rd time. He hasn't got it. He's sat up. But watch out for Ballan, Paul, because he's marking all the moves now, and I think this guy can sprint.
He's done pretty well now. There's a move by Petito going over the top there. Eric Zabel matches it, gets right onto the wheel. But this is actually looking good for the man off the front end of the race, Tom Boonen, because what happens is they accelerate to 45, 47 kilometers an hour, then they slow down. All of the time he's riding at a steady tempo. You can just see the cars in front. I have a feeling it's actually a little bit less than the 10 or 12 second mark, as Petito has got it halfway across the gap.
Well, Petito's only won 1 race in the last 4 years, and it was a stage in Tirreno Adriatico back last year, in fact, in March a year ago. And now he's trying to reach the leader of the Tour of Flanders, and there he is, Tom Boonen. We're getting a little bit of picture breakup. We're sorry about that. These pictures coming live, of course, and bouncing back into the homes from the helicopter. But this rider's probably sending out a little bit of static himself right now as he tries to stay clear for the finish. At this stage of the race, 3 kilometers from home, he either wins or he finishes 6th.
That's the only thing that he's thinking about. But, you know, the cars are just in front of him there, and it looks as if they're slowly but surely clawing back. It's 11 seconds, the official time gap to Tom Boonen. He doesn't look like a man who's weakening at all. In fact, that's 2 kilometers to go for Boonen. 11 seconds. It's still not done. It's still not in the bag, but he doesn't show any signs at all of weakening. And this is good. They've actually slowed down a fraction in this group behind. But you know what? It's still only 12 seconds. 2 kilometers to go. 3 minutes he needs to wait to know his answer.
Watch the clock. It'll nudge the 13 any moment now, because I think that little bit of relaxation by the group here, they're getting to that psychological part of the day now when they suddenly think, well, the wind's gone, I want 2nd. And now they start to fight each other, and that's when the gap will open into a comfortable margin for Tom.
The next sign that he is going to see is going to be the Flamme Rouge, the kite across the road, which will tell him he's got 1 final kilometer to go. And I think it appears once he takes this right-hand bend, there's a big archway right in front of him, and with 10 seconds to go, I don't think anybody right now is going to catch this man, Tom Boonen. There's the kilometer flag, 1,000 yards.
And the 2nd added. We're up to 13. That should be enough. That is going to be a record-breaking kilometer for the chase group if they're going to reach him. They're not going to do that now. Tom Boonen takes 1 step further forward in the eyes of the Belgian people. They're still looking for a man to replace Eddy Merckx as their finest ever cyclist. It's a long way for Tom to do that, but he's already now going to go down as a great classics rider. This will be his first monument classic victory, and it couldn't come any better in his own race, the Tour of Flanders. There's the shadow boxing now. The wind's gone for them.
Well, this is the right-hand turn now. This is around about 500 meters to go. The race is won here for Tom Boonen, third in Paris-Roubaix, but this is going to be monumental for him. He said he wasn't too worried about Milan or Sanremo. All he wanted to do was try and win this race, and he's inside 400 yards away from the win.
And from where we are sat, I can tell you the crowd in the grandstand are already cheering here, and they're craning their necks forward to catch a glimpse of 24-year-old Tom Boonen. He won 24 races last year. He'd give them all away to win this one. He can't believe it's today, that it's his big day in the world of cycling in his own country. He comes home as winner of the 89th Tour of Flanders, and that means Tom Boonen now has arrived in the real big time of Belgian cycling. Just look at that. There's a big message in that powerful victory salute. There's the phalanx of photographers there as Boonen comes home. He's won Game Wevelgem. That was a great moment, but now he has won La Ronde.
He's certainly done that. That was a great time. You know, this man could have won the race in the sprint if he'd wanted to, Phil, but he wanted to do it in emphatic style. He went away and knew that it was so risky to try and get himself the win, and it looks here as if that's Andreas Clear. He may well have caught the riders off guard and come up to take second place.
Well, we never saw the attack, but T-Mobile won it last year. They've made recompense with a second place this year by Andreas Clear. That's a great result for him, but they would have preferred the win, I am sure. And Van Petegem just gets the podium place, I think, and Petito, Zabel and Ballan taking sixth of the six places, which was a great result for him. And here is the groups now as they can continue to come in. 6 hours 22 minutes. They've been out there in the sun today, and it really has been very warm. George HINCAPIE here in the sprint, trying to salvage something here from the race today. We've had 6 riders finish. This will be the race for 7th. HINCAPIE trying to break through and take it. He looks so I think he might get this, as HINCAPIE's still strong. He'll have to hang on as he comes up towards the line, but HINCAPIE crossed the line. I think he's in 7th place as he brings home the race. He just pips Leon Van Bon on the line there. There is the man of the moment, the tears of emotion. After 6 hours and 20 minutes, everything he's promised is now reality. There's the result confirmed. Boonen, Clear, Van Petegem, Zabel, Petito, Ballan had a great ride. HINCAPIE confirmed in 7th place, where he pipped Leon Van Bon in the sprint and even off from T-Mobile just behind. Well, Lance Armstrong today rode superbly for George HINCAPIE, giving it his best shot, showing us his form is on its way. And let's face it, July is not that far away, but I think a place in the top 10 today was a little bit over-ambitious. So to enormous cheers from his Belgian fans here, Boonen steps up into the #1 position. Alongside him, another great man of La Ronde, Peter Van Petegem. He's won it twice before. Now he's on the podium again. And that's a great result for him. And Andreas Clear there taking the 2nd place, which is also a good result for him. And poor old Erik Zabel just missing out yet again in what likely is his final Tour of Flanders. But there's the man who has delighted the home crowd. Belgium have waited a long time to get a true champion. They've had Johan Museeuw. Eddy Merckx set the bar too high for everybody. This rider, though, everybody feels has an incredible future. 24.5 years of age. He's just got his 32nd pro win. So let's have a look at the Pro Tour standings. As I say, it was a bit of a non-event, and the UCI decided not to have a jersey presentation at the start, nor one at the finish, because Alessandro Ballan isn't here, and he's still the leader. But that win by Tom Boonen has moved him right up the overall classification into 4th, while George HINCAPIE also has improved with his 7th place finish from 15th into 10th.